Season 4, Episode 1 of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources, joined today by our president, Matt Boisvert. Hello, Matt.
Hi. How's it going, Rachel?
It's great. I am in such a good mood for a couple of different reasons. One is I've just had a great cup of coffee, so that always helps with my mood. But also, I am just thinking about what is happening on college campuses all over the United States and Canada, and thinking about all of the practitioners that we work with who are getting re-energized by students showing up on campus, all of their work in orientation, all of their work to try to get students moved in and acclimated to the environment, all of the things they're managing with homesickness, and just it is a really, really exciting time of the year. It also is a very busy time of the year.
Definitely.
So if you guys are joining us in LinkedIn Live, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend an hour with us as we talk about things in higher education. I was thinking about, I know a lot of you listen to us as a podcast, wherever you're getting your podcast, as you're washing the dishes or walking the dog or whatever. So delighted to be able to spend this time with you. Matt, I was just thinking that one of the things I love about higher education is the rhythm of the academic year and how we get new starts all the time. Yeah, every fall and every spring, we get a new start. And I was thinking about, this is our 4th season of the show. So many of you are faithful listeners. I meet you at conferences and you're so kind to say, hey, we really liked when you talked about this, or this was really helpful to me in my work. So I was thinking it would be helpful. I think we have a bunch of new listeners, people who are joining us because we've started this new rhythm of the academic year. I would like for us just to do a quick introduction, both of who we are and then also what the Cap and Gown podcast is all about. You guys might notice, if you have joined me before, that I have a new background. Matt was saying it looks like a fake background, but it's not. It's a real background. It's actually a mortar board hat. You can't tell because I'm pretty close. But I just love new beginnings. So would you like to introduce yourself, and then I'll go and talk a little bit about our podcast?
Sure. Matt Boisvert. I do serve as president of Ferris Resources, passionate about student success and service excellence, and have worked in higher ed for a long time before Rachel and I started Ferris. So,
I am Rachel Phillips-Buck. Like I said, VP for Student Success. My background is as a counselor, worked in higher education for a long time. Before Matt and I started Ferris Resources, we serve so many institutions, specifically around student success and retention. So we provide technology, but also consulting and best practices. We really do think about our institutions as our partners. We're really invested in the good work you do with your students. We're going to be talking today about the purpose of your work. And so I have just been thinking so much about what a privilege it is to be able to do good work and serve alongside all of the people that we get to partner with. So our podcast is really about issues in higher education. A lot of times we talk about books that we think are going to be helpful, either for you to share with your students or in your personal life as you're trying to order your career or your attention. We also do interviews. This semester, we have a couple of interviews actually with Dr. Sherry Woosley, who we love so much from Macmillan Learning. I am also going to introduce some of our other team members. We serve with a great team at Ferris Resources, and all of us have experience in higher education all over the place. So you guys have met some of our team, but I have some more team members for you. And we're going to unveil the book that we're going to be doing this semester as well. Today is the first day that we're going to be talking about that. So all of that is housekeeping. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're really delighted to be able to be with you. Matt, anything to add? Oh, yes, I know what you're going to tell me. Also, you guys, we have the rhythm of the academic year. So we are in season 4, episode 1. We're just aligned with your work in that way. But every year we uncover our theme for the year, and that goes for the whole calendar year. So we unveiled it in January. And our theme of 2023 is joy, because we need some. And so we're going to invest in that. We've done quite a bit of quite a few podcasts about that over the last 6 months. But we start off every podcast with a new word from Joy from another country in a different language. And if this is the first time you're joining me, Matt does this part because I'm terrible at it. It stresses me out and I'm bad at it. So Matt, what is our word for joy today?
It's been so long. So first of all, this comes from this book. It's Happiness Found in Translation, a glossary of joy from around the world. This is from Tim Lomas. And so today's word, and I ought to, it's French. So you would think I'd just be able to nail it, the pronunciation. I had 3 years of French and it's kind of worn off since high school, but retrouver, I think is how you'd put a little French on it. Anyway, this is French. It is rediscovery, refinding, reunion. The joy of reuniting with loved ones, a precious moment of reconnection, which I thought was just perfect for today. When you think about this start of the academic year and also start of season 4.
Great. I love it. Thank you. Okay. So let me just, before we dive into the first part of our podcast, I want to say that our normal format is that I do like 15, 20 minutes of State of the Union, and then we move on to our topic today. This show is going to be a little bit different because the State of the Union that I have to cover is like from May until now. And so I'm not going to spend the whole podcast on it, but there are some really, really big things that are going on in higher education that I just want to like orient us all to and remind us of. So we're going to spend a little bit more time in State of the Union, and then we'll move on to our topic today, which is around our new book called Drive. We didn't write it. Our new book that we're talking about called Drive. And it is about motivation. So it's time for State of the Union. All right. I have divided State of the Union today into macro and micro issues. So we're going to talk about really big things that are happening in the space of higher education, and then we're going to talk about some fun little things that are happening on campus. So first of all, you guys know, we talked about last May, FAFSA is being revamped. They are going to roll it out. Let's see, they're going to roll it out in December. I think usually it comes out in October. I am frustrated about this, and it is not my business to know the FAFSA. So I can't imagine what is happening with our financial aid counselors at all of our universities. There's a lot of new reporting requirements. There's different methodology that they want people to use. Obviously, there's a compressed time frame for getting students to fill this out for their early decisions. So because the time frame is going to be shorter, they think fewer students are going to be able to do early decisions because they won't have been able to get their FAFSA in yet. It is very frustrating because they're like, hey, yeah, it's going to be harder to do and you're going to have to learn it. You should just hire more people, which wouldn't that be nice if we could just hire more people? But it's going to be a hardship. Another thing to think about with this is that a lot of state governments estimate the funding for state grants for college based on FAFSA applications. So kind of like the difference between last year's applications and this year applications. And so they're looking at those in January. Well, because they're not going to roll this out until December, they're going to have much fewer students who are going to have completed it, and they're not going to have all the information they need to be able to make good decisions. So,
Rachel.
Yes.
Why did they feel the need to redo FAFSA?
Well, what they're saying is that it expands Pell Grant eligibility, and it lowers barriers for certain student populations, including those who are homeless, incarcerated, and come from low-income backgrounds. So it's a good reason that they've decided to do that. I think the difficulty is that the story has been, it's not going to be a burden for financial aid professionals. And then all of a sudden, when people started to look at what the changes were, they seemed like a lot more substantial than everyone was expecting. So it's just the shortened timeline, and the changes were not what people were expecting. So if you see your financial aid counselor colleague on campus, just give them a pat on the back and say, I'm really sorry. This is going to be hard. Also, we've been talking about SAT requirements. 1,900 schools are not requiring those for the fall of 2024. Just continuing test optional and test free practices. We know research shows that exam scores rise with income levels. However, ACT and SAT continue to say it's a good way to benchmark students' preparedness for college. And Matt, as we have been saying, you have to find a surrogate for that so that you understand how prepared students are that are coming to your campus, right?
Yeah.
So pretty interesting.
So a lot
Okay.
of schools are falling back on high school GPA as their primary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Also remember we did a whole episode about ChatGPT a couple of months ago. We said, hey guys, it's coming. You need to have plans for this. So The Atlantic has a huge article that's called The Second Year of AI College. It's really interesting. I've seen a very uneven approach to AI on different campuses. Some are like, anything that you do with it, absolutely not. Some are giving good guidelines on how you should use it. Really curious to see just in the second year, right? Because it kind of hit us late in the spring semester. I think students knew about it long before we did. It hit us late in the spring semester. We had the summer to decide. This article is interesting because it's saying that a lot of administrators, because they don't want to have the wrong policy, they're waiting on a policy to see kind of how it shakes out. Like, is it going to be like email where it's ubiquitous and everybody uses it? Or are we going to treat it more like, plagiarism and cheating? And so shockingly, higher education is moving very slowly on this issue. I know that's
well. I just want to share. This comes from the neurondaily.com, and it is your quick cheat sheet to become a power user of ChatGPT, and it's pretty awesome. It's like, so it's just things that you don't think about, like, hey, when writing, use this kind of tone. So use a conversational tone on this prompt that I've given you, or you can tell it specific formats. You can actually tell it to output it as a table with these columns.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's just a whole lot of ways to use ChatGPT, and the reality is, it is a tool.
It's coming.
And it is coming.
There's a quote in this article that says, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who understands how to use AI, which I think is really interesting. Also, though, there's a great article in Inside Higher Ed about how to use ChatGPT in college career services, right? So the ability to tailor your resume. You have a functional resume, but you're applying for a particular job and you want to tailor your resume. ChatGPT is great at synonyms and action words. I need a list of here's the word, give me 5 other words for that. Also thinking about interview prep. I'm going to go interview for a job and this is the qualifications and the responsibilities. Please ask me all the questions that you think they might ask me. So I think there's ways to use it as a tool for sure.
The power of taking a job description and putting it into ChatGPT, copy paste the job description, and then saying, I'm going in for an interview, give me 20 behavioral interview questions in specific themes related to this job description. And to see that output as far as that interview prep, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is going to be, I feel like I'm a roving reporter, like ChatGPT. It continues to evolve, more to come on this story because we don't really know what's going on, but it's going to be interesting to see over the next 2 semesters what happens.
For sure.
Some not so good news, but I'm a glasses half full kind of a girl, so I'm going to give it to you like good news. That is that Title IX that you were supposed to get all of the revisions to in June has been pushed back to October, which means you have a lot more time. No, not really, right? Like, you're not going to be able to set up your handbook that starts today until you get Title IX revisions in October. So
you're going to be at midterms when that comes out. Yeah.
So I'm really curious to know what schools are doing. Like, if they're going to be making, I mean, I think you have to, it's going to become the law. So you have to make revisions to your handbook. This comes because there were 240,000 public comments on the proposed rule.
Amazing.
Almost twice as many comments as the last time they asked.
Which was a lot.
Which was a lot. So sorry, you guys, you didn't get that in time for your handbook revisions. But in October, when you're doing registration and midterms and you have nothing else to do, you will get those proposed changes, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see. I mean, they say October. I wouldn't be surprised if it slips to like late December, just in time for the holidays.
Yeah, it's so difficult. Okay, another really big thing in our higher education space is the Supreme Court that ruled in, I think it was last month or maybe it was June, that race conscious admissions practices at Harvard University and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill are unconstitutional. It was a split decision, so it was not unanimous. You had some dissenters. It's really interesting, I think, to read both sides of the opinion. I think we're going to see how this is going to shake out. One caveat that I have, though, this article about the decision is like, also, guys, remember, most colleges do not rely on race as an admission factor because they accept the majority or all of their applicants. This is primarily affecting Ivy League institutions who have that piece embedded in their admissions policies. So for most of the institutions in the United States, it's not going to change a lot. In fact, there's a lot of hope and a lot of discussion that it will help people at institutions articulate their values apart from what the law says, that you would say we want to have a diverse student body. And so we're going to be invested in that, not because the law says we have to, but because that's really important to us, right?
Yeah, which is, I love. I mean, it's a lot, I don't know, just as far as like, am I a good fit for the institution to know as they articulate it? Absolutely. We want you to belong. We're seeking applicants like you.
Yeah.
So
I think it'll be very interesting. Okay. And the last big macro thing that I haven't talked to you about in 3 months or 4 months or however long it's been is NIL. You remember this is, oh man, I can never remember. NIL is name, image, likeness. Okay. Name, image, likeness for athletes. We're 2 years into name, image, likeness. Those of you who listen to us regularly, we talk about this all the time. I'm fascinated by it because it's always evolving and there's always all these little, like, we didn't see that coming. Now what are we going to do about it? Right.
Right.
So first of all, college athletes collectively made an estimated $917 million from NIL payments in the first year.
It's
wow.
Amazing.
That is amazing. The most lucrative deals went to football and men's basketball stars. NCAA Division I athletes reportedly earned an average of $3,700 in the first year. So per athlete, that's about what it is. Obviously, you have some athletes who like made a lot of money.
They're going to take a pay cut when they go to the NFL.
Yeah, for real. So one of the things that has evolved is that all of these conferences, athletic conferences, are very frustrated because the federal government is not making laws around NIL. So what that means is that every state is making their own laws about what students can do or not do. And so you have conferences that are like, it's not fair because our state is being very strict about this. We're competing against a state that is not strict about it. And so, hey, federal government, can you please say something about what's going on? The government is like, someday, but probably not soon, basically. I'm paraphrasing, they didn't actually say that, but they're like, there's a lot of things to consider. We're not really moving on that. There's some bills that are like being floated, but they're not really doubling down on that. So it's really interesting what's happening in these different conferences, especially because, there's like all this shuffle in the conferences, like everybody's moving around and it's hard to know what's gonna happen in Division I sports.
Yeah.
But the other unintended consequence that we should have seen coming, but we didn't, is the creation of collectives, which are not affiliated with the schools, but are structurally independent of schools, yet I like this, fund NIL opportunities for student athletes. They raise funds to create opportunities for student athletes to leverage their NIL in exchange for compensation, which sounds awesome until you find out that they're mostly operated by fans and boosters who are like, I will pay you $3 million if you will come to school here and be our quarterback, right? So there's some things we got to get worked out. The last thing I'll tell you is that there's 2 court cases where athletes are saying we should be considered employees of an institution. And so the National Labor Board argues that college athletes should be considered employees, and they filed a complaint against the NCAA. And then there's an individual lawsuit where a student is saying I should be considered an employee. So if that happens, then what? More to come.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyway, I get very excited
Well,
about those things.
I think if you start off with just in the first year, $917 million, I think it's a huge industry. And for a long time, student athletes have been undervalued, or I don't know, underrepresented. And so I think in this shuffle, there's just, like you said, there's just a whole lot that's to come. We're learning a whole lot. There's a lot of dynamics in play, and the effect of paying your student athletes, then how does that affect a non-athlete on your campus? And from a tuition standpoint, is that at the expense of raising tuition, or how is that?
Yeah. Well, also, I wonder, like $917 million, like, is that new money, or that's money that then the schools are not getting? Like, I feel like I could do a whole paper on this. I have a lot of questions about it. So, okay, can we go on to micro things? So those are the big things. Can we talk about the micro things?
I love your list of the micro things, because I think these are really interesting, just trends that are happening on campuses.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know that for so many of our listeners, there's like this broader context, which is like, you want to be informed about the industry you're in, but also there are students in my office. What can I do to help them? Right. So Matt, you and I are always talking about like actionable. We always want to have our action items where it's like, that's an idea that I can use today. Right. So, okay. So here's my micro for you. First of all, there's actually a lot going on campuses with food. It's really interesting. I think, well, I'm not going to guess why this is happening, but there are campuses that have food delivery robots. You remember we talked about this like 3 or 4 years ago. Now it's just becoming the norm on big campuses. Like you just have
I think you're avoiding it, but so much of this came out of COVID. So like the robots, how do we deliver food to students who are in isolation? Send a robot.
Yeah. And I think there's something strange that happened, maybe because of COVID, where it used to be on a campus that you got your food from the cafeteria. I can't tell you the number of times that I ate off campus when I was a freshman. I mean, maybe once a week I would eat off campus. Most of the time I was in the cafeteria. That is not the norm for these students. They're used to DoorDash. They're used to Grubhub. Grubhub, is that what it's called? So this idea of like, I'm not going to the cafeteria to get all of my meals. I want other opportunities and other options. So pizza delivery robots. We have some campuses that are doing self-serve kiosks. Like, you know, when you go to the airport and there's McDonald's and you just like punch in what you want and then you wait for it to come. All these colleges are like, students are really well acquainted with that. They know how to use them. We put them, and then we don't have to have people at the front of the house taking orders, which is really interesting. The other one is food lockers. So especially if you have a really big campus, you can imagine like in res halls, you would have food lockers where students could go and get something to eat. They don't have to go all the way to the cafeteria. And then the last one around food that I love so much is, I mean, you know that I love cooking. I was like, I would do this in a heartbeat. If there's any college that wants me to come and do this for you, just let me know. I'll fly there. But they're talking about teaching students how to cook. So they're actually doing cooking classes in demo kitchens or in a kitchen in a res hall. They're talking about like elements of nutrition science and those sorts of things, but they're trying to give them this experience of like, if you want to come and learn how to make cheap, fast, and healthy food in the kitchen, or if you want to fuel your fitness, here's the kind of meal that you should be creating. Crock pots, like, do you have a crock pot? We're going to teach you how to use that. What I really love is a couple of schools are doing meal kit Mondays. So like for $25, students and employees can pick up 4-serving meal kit and a recipe card that they can whip up at home. Or some other schools are saying like, hey, come and we're going to teach you how to do one really good meal. Like you need to know how to make a meal for 4 and dessert, and here's how much it's going to cost. And then you can go with your friends and eat it. So I just think it's so interesting. And think about building community like that, right? Some of the best ways that I know to build community are to have people in my kitchen cooking with me. Because we're doing a thing, but we're talking and we're learning about each other. And so I think that's so much fun. I like that way better than robots.
Yeah. But I love it. So we've talked about this as we've worked with schools for their commuter population and how to bring community together. Absolutely. We've seen some really great practices where a school has a kitchen and a place for commuter students to come together, and then they'll have a chef who teaches a lesson about stir fry or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think bringing all that together, you can be very intentional about how to bring community into that. It's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Sharing a meal together is a great way.
For sure. Okay. Beginning of the semester reminder, your students do not realize how much sleep impacts their academic success. Matt, you and I did a whole episode on teaching students about the importance of sleep. So just a reminder, as your freshmen are coming, a lot of them just don't have good sleep habits and don't understand how much that impacts things like your GPA, your memory, your ability to learn, all of those pieces. There's an article in Inside Higher Ed that's called 6 Ways to Help College Students Prioritize Sleep. I recommend you read it. It has some helpful things. One of the things that I love about it, though, is talk about commuter students. They have a space with nap mats where they're like, if you can't go home, you can come and take a nap here, before your next class or whatever. What a great way to be like, sleep is really important. If you're tired in the middle of the day, take a nap. I like it.
Who does that?
Oh, I don't remember who it is. What they're saying, though, is that when you emphasize for students the GPA, memory, and learning, they tend to make good choices, right? You're not their mom trying to be like, you have to be in bed by. You're saying a key to your academic success is your ability actually to get sleep. Let's see. Hold on. I can tell you. Good. University of Texas at Austin. Nap mats. Yeah.
All right.
2 more for you. A reminder is the beginning of the semester where we have some homesick college students. Dr. Woosley makes a distinction between homesick separation, which most students go through, which is like, I miss my family, I miss my house, I miss my bed, and homesickness distressed, which is, I want to go home every weekend. I don't want to be here. My family's unhappy that I'm gone. I need to go and see them. And so just assessing for those different pieces. Also, we forget sometimes that homesickness actually does have physical symptoms. So things like feeling anxious, not being able to sleep, feeling isolated, feeling irritable, those sorts of things are things you're looking at. And we're always talking about, you just predict it and you just tell students this is really normal. This is what happens. Get them connected, make sure that they are engaged. I always say that orientation is like smoke and mirrors for our students. We're trying to get them pulled in, but a lot of what we're doing is distracting them from all of the anxiety that comes from a transition just in general. It's like, don't sit in your room and think about how hard this is. Come and be with people and do all of this fun stuff. So it's really good work that you guys are doing. Just remember to be looking for homesickness distressed, which is different than just separation.
That's good.
Okay, I have 2 more for you. This one I'm super excited about. This comes from Ball State University. They have created a list of standard off-campus rental expectations for student housing. So in the community, they're saying to landlords, here are the things that if you want to be like on the preferred list of of students renting, here are the things that we expect for you to do. Because Ball State also has free legal services for any student who needs legal support around lease agreements, landlord disputes, or other housing charges. So they're like, hey, we are going to support them if you're not doing what you're supposed to, but if you will get on this list and say that you're going to do this stuff, everything's going to turn out better for everyone, right? So it's like clean and well kept, safe conditions. Common areas have to be clean. Messages will be responded to within 24 hours. You will make repairs in a reasonable time. Like, they just have a list of what an adult who has some experience would expect from a landlord. So they're teaching students this is what is appropriate when you're leasing, and also giving landlords an opportunity to get on this preferred list of like, we recommend that you are in these houses. So I love that. I think that is so smart. Let's see. Yeah. So their goal there is to make it easier for everyone, also to have fewer legal need for their legal services that they're providing.
Interesting.
That's a great way, Matt. I was just thinking about like students who live off campus, even if you just had like a introduction at the end of the spring semester when they're thinking about next year housing, to say, here are the things that you should be looking for. These are the standards for renting a house. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, and the last one I have for you is some tea about the College Board selling information about students to TikTok and Facebook. If you use some of the search tools promoted by the College Board's website, the organization sends details about SAT scores, GPA, and other data to Facebook and TikTok. They're doing this like through, it's called a pixel. So it's kind of like a cookie, but it's smaller than a cookie. They're not giving students names and phone numbers, but they're giving an identifiable number to the student so that those platforms can then push advertisements to the students around like for example, a college that's like, hey, we accept students with an SAT between these scores. Then you would be able to identify a student whose score falls within that and push advertising to them. So it's not as bad as like leaking your data or like giving them everything. But remember that in 2018 and 2019, the College Board was selling data about students, including the names of SAT test takers, for 47 cents a piece to whoever wanted to buy them. And then in 2020, they found a similar data sharing practice in which the College Board told Google, Facebook, and other companies about nearly everything you did on their website. And then in response to that, the College Board signed the Student Privacy Pledge, which is a voluntary commitment between education technology companies that's like, hey, we're not going to sell all your information. But then that they scrubbed that from their website, and then they are no longer listed as a person who signed it. So there's some shady things going on there.
But so what's the source of that, Rachel?
This is Gizmodo. This is like a undercover, like this is a technology magazine that is going in and saying, we can show you exactly how we know that they're selling this information. So.
Wow.
Don't do that, guys. And that is the State of the Union. That's kind of ending on a negative note. Sorry. I'll do better next time. Next time I'll end on NatMats.
Yeah.
Like we just need an reflection in the State of the Union so we don't feel depressed about it.
Let's do that.
All right. So we are going to be talking about Drive this semester by Daniel Pink, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And we're going to unpack the chapters of this book. We're going to really do a deep dive into all of the different elements of motivation. But our time today is going to be about why we're looking at motivation. Matt, why you and I picked this book to be kind of our focus this semester, and trying to uncover the reason this is a relevant topic for us. And as always, we want to apply this both to our students as well as to our colleagues and our partners in student life and academics, higher education. So I think the rest of our time this afternoon is going to be really about making the case for needing to re-examine what motivates people and how we can capitalize on that for our students and for each other. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that's good. I mean, we all know how important this is right now. Some of us are really feeling it, that just a sense of even so. I love the start of a new year because the campus has been quiet. We've kind of lost that energy of all the students, and then we have this moment where they're all back, and you see their energy and excitement. And typically for us on a campus, this is also very exciting. But we know as we're going into this year, a lot of our campuses, it it's lost some of that energy or excitement. And so just coming back to the kind of the heart of it and really building off of joy, the idea of, how then can we find the true kind of our true north or the why we do what we do.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick science lesson on motivation. You know that my undergraduate's in psychology, so I took so many tests on motivation and why people do what they do. So I'm going to give you a quick history lesson about that, and then we'll move on to some of the differences that we're seeing now. So this book is really helpful, I think, because they talk about like what is the operating system for people. Like why do you do what you do? What are the rules, right? What are you looking for? What's your motivation around specific things? So if we think about back in the day, and I mean a long time ago, motivation 1.0 was find food and don't get eaten. That's like the only thing we're trying to accomplish, right?
Run fast. Yeah.
Run fast, yeah, and find food. Feed your family. So obviously, then we sort of evolve a little bit into different motivations. And we have researchers that start talking about this idea that humans are mostly trying to seek rewards and avoid punishment. So reward the good things, punish the bad things. You can get people to do what you want. It's really interesting because there was a lot of research around like, training monkeys to do things. And those researchers were like, people are motivated in the same way as monkeys. Monkeys are motivated by food. You give them things they like, they'll do more of that behavior. If you punish them for behavior you don't like, then they'll do less of that behavior. And that was really an underlying understanding of motivation for many years. In fact, you can see so many elements of work culture during this time that was built on this idea that you had to have supervisors who watched you, who rewarded when you did the things you didn't and punished you when you did the wrong things. And that the way our work culture was successful was all of the right people did the right things at the right time, and then we were going to be really successful, right? So it will shock you to find out the kind of godfather of that element of business, his name was Frederick Taylor. He was an engineer. And so he wrote all of these articles about if you can just engineer people to do more of the good thing and less of the bad thing, then your company, your business is going to be really, really successful. So then there was like a slight tweak to that where a researcher named Hertzberg came back and he was like, okay, listen, there's intrinsic motivation and there's extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation for jobs and for work and for school are things like grades and pay and working conditions and job security. And that those things didn't necessarily make people more satisfied, but if they didn't have them, they were dissatisfied, right? So it's not like when you get them, you're like, oh, good, I got paid today. No, you expect to get paid. That's an intrinsic motivation for doing your work. But when you don't get paid, you feel mad. I think you call this an enrager. I think it's a different application, but it's a similar idea, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. For some of these things, it would be an enrager. If you're putting in a lot of labor and your employer doesn't pay you, definitely would be an enrager.
Yeah, for sure. So he then, though, talks about intrinsic motivators, which are things that come from inside of us, right? Which is like, I like my work. I'm achieving a thing. I have personal growth. We think about for students things like a genuine interest, a deep learning, an experience of mental well-being because you're doing a thing that you're really excited about. There's a book that just came out that's called Off the Mark: How Grades, Ratings, and Rankings Undermine Learning, to Professor Snyder and Hutt. And they talk about this idea of, especially coming through COVID, where we stripped out so many of the joyful elements of learning, right? Classroom interaction and creativity and relationships with our faculty and our teachers. And we reduced those down to tasks that then were assigned grades. It puts us in a position where students are working for grades. They're not working for that sort of love of learning and the experience that they're getting in classrooms. And so I think that clearly is a place where we've been knocked out of intrinsic motivation over to extrinsic motivation. It doesn't make me happy to sit on the computer and do online classes, but I'm doing it so that I can get a grade so that then I can graduate and go on, right? One other thing I want to say about that, Matt, is I was thinking about when I did my career program at the institution that I worked at. And I was thinking about how I had no grades. I had no attendance requirements. I just had to make it the most motivating thing for those students that I could, because there was no extrinsic motivation for them, right? Like if they didn't come every single time, nothing happened to them except they missed the content and it wouldn't be helpful to them. You know what I mean? And I wonder about reinvigorating that piece of learning for students where it's like community and you want to come because we're on a path together and we're discovering things. And you would be sad if you missed it because it's helpful for you. Like you enjoy it, you're achieving a thing. You should feel proud about yourself that you're on this journey, right? So yeah. Are you unhappy about the fact that I wasn't offering grades? Your face took a whole trip on that.
No, I was thinking like what would be some of those extrinsic motivators of being a part of that. So of course there's like the personal side, but also I think that there's something about, I don't know, being seen, someone else getting to know you and encouraging you, being able to provide this guidance. I know that's definitely personally, internally motivating, but also I think that a lot of our work when we're engaging students is giving this guidance that adds so much value to them. So I don't know where that fits, this outside motivation where I can go somewhere and be heard and seen and learn from someone else.
Yeah, we're going to have to think about that a little bit because I'm not sure where you put the empowerment. I don't know where that lives, right? Because it's like they like feeling empowered. They like being empowered and seen, which is an internal thing. You are providing them with something, right? You are giving them some kind of reward. So I don't know. I don't know if it's rewarding good behavior. I don't know. We'll do another episode about that. We're going to have to think about that a little bit, how we motivate our students.
Sorry to blow you off the rails on that.
No, that's fine. My point about all of that was strip out the pay, grades, whatever, and look at why somebody would be motivated to do the things you're asking them to do, because that's this new idea of motivation. That we can't just say, I'm going to give you a grade for it, I'm going to pay, and they're somehow going to be like, this was a great experience. They have an expectation of those things, but they're not motivated by those things, right? So I think it's a good exercise to say, is this of value to you, even without grades or rankings or ratings or whatever?
I know what the extrinsic motivation is.
Oh,
when they call home when they call home, their parents tell them they're proud of them or give them some positive affirmation about their work.
Maybe so.
Maybe so.
Okay, so thinking about this difference between kind of motivators and then things that we just expect to be there, the premise of this book and the reason that we've picked it is that we've actually moved into Motivation 3.0, which is really about how we are not just extrinsically motivated profit maximizers, right? Like it used to be when this engineer was thinking about these things, he was like, business is so that we can have profits. And the way we have profits is we pay people to do the right thing at the right time and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we've kind of have a different understanding of what we're all doing right now. And that is not that we are extrinsically motivated profit maximizer. We actually are in a place where we're purpose maximizers, where what we want to do is like make an impact on the world for good. We want to use our gifts to do something that changes things, that has some meaning behind it, right? And so, Matt, you and I have talked before about doing things in flow where it's challenging and you have to master it, and it requires your attention, but that it's achievable, that your brain enters like a different kind of deep work piece. Those are the kinds of purpose maximizer projects that you want to be finding. This is like mastering a problem or creating something that's a gift for somebody else, or social businesses that are not about profits, that are about, curing hunger or providing clean water. This is it's like a third level of motivation that's not just about profit and creating value for a business or for a school, but actually that you want to make a difference in the world, right? And so I think a really great example of this you and I have been talking about is Wikipedia, where it's like there are thousands of people that for no clear reason, they're not getting paid, it takes their time, they are investing in creating bodies of knowledge around particular things that they're interested in or that they have, and like hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours going in creating Wikipedia articles. And the reason is this third drive, which is they want to be a master of something. They want to create something for someone else. They want to make social change in the world. And that is worth their time. And that's the kind of motivation that we want to tap into, both for our students and for our colleagues as well. One more thing that I'm going to add about that, and that is just that this idea of algorithm work, which is like, if you do the right thing at the right time, you'll come out to the right outcome. That's the kind of work that AI is going to take over and that robots are going to take over and that we outsource. It counts for only 30% of the increase in jobs. This other kind of work, which we call heuristic work, which is about creativity and thinking of new things and new ideas and going someplace no one's ever gone before, that's where so much of the job growth is. It's like 70% of the job growth is in that. And so we have to be thinking for our students, how do we motivate them to be in that place of creative learning, not fall back on, we're just trying to get our grades, we're just trying to get out of this and like move on and do something else. So there's something happening in society. I don't know if you've heard of vocational vacations. Have you heard of this?
Well, you were telling me about this.
So this is where people on their vacation, so they're using their paid time off and they're paying to go try a new job. Like I want to be a chef for a week, or I want to run a bike shop for a week, or I want to like be I don't know, whatever you can think of. And it's really interesting because it is work for satisfaction, right? They're willing to pay money and use time to do this thing, not work for pay. And I think it taps into this idea of people like to do challenging, interesting things where they use their brain and they can master some creative problem. And the same old, that like just always do the same thing until you get to the same place people are not motivated by that. It is not a good way to live, right?
It reminds me of the school we served in Alaska, where every summer they would have 100 people come to the campus and do construction projects all summer, and like incredible things would be built. An entire res hall would be built just for the cost of materials, because you had these people who wanted to go to Alaska, wanted to be in Alaska, but also just loved to work with their hands. And this gave them a great opportunity to
Yeah.
contribute to this campus. That's a great example of using your vacation, not getting paid, living in Alaska, working for 20 hours a day, basically, while the sun's out. But doing it because it's fun, and the reward is not money.
Yeah.
It's you get to look at a thing and say, look, I was a part of this campus.
So Matt, it's funny because this book talks about how actually intrinsic rewards damage that kind of work. So I might go to Alaska and work 18 hours a day to build this res hall because I believe in it and I think it's fun and it's really enjoyable. But if the school said, will you come and do that and we'll pay you $100 or we'll pay you $2,000, you would be like, no, I'm doing this because it's a project I'm invested in. I don't want you to give me money for it. Also, that's not what it's about. Like, the value of it to me is much more than $2,000, right?
It's kind of like me fly fishing. You know, I love teaching, but if you paid me and that became my job to go and give tours, I think of, again, in Alaska, you have Cody who has to take people out who are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And don't understand anything.
Yeah.
So
for sure. But I mean, I think if you just think of something you love, right? And then you're like, what if somebody, I mean, I do that because that's a passion project, because that's something that is just enjoyable to me. And then when someone starts paying you for it, you're like, I don't know. Now, listen, we have to be careful because I know that student affairs and academic professionals do really good work and they're very passionate about their work, and we should pay them well for that work because they are invested, they do value the work, and there is something about doing a job for money, right? So we don't want to leave this conversation saying intrinsic or extrinsic motivation is not a helpful thing. We for sure want to motivate our people that way, but there are things that you do just because you love them. And that's good work. That's exciting work for individuals to do.
But Rachel, I think the key thing for our listeners, those who are in the work of student success, the key thing is, it really is about, for me, it's about leadership, being in an environment where these things are allowed, where you're invested in these ways, right? So that you would have a leader say, hey, I'm really excited for you to go and grow by being a chef for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, and just, so how do we recharge? How do we get out of this state of a lot of our colleagues being burnt out? And it's encouraging one another to get out and do things that really are personally motivating and help you grow, right?
Yeah. So I think what we're going to unpack for the rest of the semester is Pink saying, the author, not Daniel Pink, saying that the third drive of motivation is really around autonomy, it's around mastery, and it's around purpose. And weaving together independence, challenging problems, and a reason how you're going to impact the world for good. That is how we reinvigorate ourselves to do good work. Because I think, Matt, if you are feeling burnt out, you can look at those three things and make an assessment of where that leg got knocked out from under you. Either you were not autonomous anymore because we had a bunch of regulations we had to do and you were doing a job that was not your job, or people left and you were doing 8 jobs. And so now you feel overwhelmed and you don't feel self-directed and in charge of your work, or you stopped being able to think of new things and do new things and have ideas because you're just like stuck in the doldrums of we're just trying to keep our heads above water, right? Which would be about mastery. Or you were separated, your daily work was separated from your purpose of serving students. You didn't have them coming into your office. You were doing a bunch of things and you weren't able to do the good work, which is hang out in the cafeteria with a bunch of students and listen to what they're going through and do mentorship there. So I think those three things can be a really helpful assessment for us to say, oh, that's the place where, or all three, right? That's the place where I stopped feeling motivated about what I'm doing, and I started feeling overwhelmed, taken advantage of, burnt out, just exhausted and disconnected from really good work. So we are going to unpack all three of those things for the rest of the semester. I was thinking about them in application for our students, thinking about how we give them autonomy, like freedom to choose what classes do you want to take, what schedule do you want to take, what special projects do you want to take on. Thinking about our students and their investment in projects that they love that have nothing to do with schoolwork. You know what I mean? Like, you have students who are like, I don't want to do that paper, but I will spend tons of time on this other project because I'm interested in it, because it's hard and I want to master it, you know? And then also how we connect their education, not just to grades, because they get that piece, but to this idea of being great thinkers, being creative, using your mind, the joy of learning and the joy of excitement. Those are all things that we have to articulate for them, I think, to motivate them to be successful.
It's good.
Yep. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think this guiding students toward discovering their purpose is some of the best work, right? And so being able to have this language that Daniel Pink writes about with Drive, to be able to help a student understand the reason why you're feeling frustrated is because of you don't feel like you're autonomous, and you don't even know how much of a gift that would be to have autonomy. So just being able to work that out, and then the effect of that by teaching that is you yourself have a more clarity on how these three things are so important to you. It's important to all of us. So
Yeah.
it's really good.
I just love how language helps organize our thoughts and goals. And so just having those three words in front of your brain as you are going through the next couple of weeks with students and motivating them to be successful in these early weeks, which we know are really, really hard, I think is going to be really helpful in your work. So next week, I am interviewing Lindsay May, who is one of our new employees. She is a recent grad. She was Abilene Christian University's SGA president. And so we are going to talk to her about some of her experiences as an undergrad, and then some of her experiences as she's joined the team. So I'm really excited about that one. And then that's as far as I have the whole schedule, but I can't remember what's after that. So,
Dr. Sherry Ruthie's coming up.
oh, is she after that? You don't know.
Well,
she'll be here a couple of times. Anyway, you guys, thanks so much for joining us. Please be motivated in your work. And if you are feeling unmotivated, stick with us this semester. We're going to explore some tools that are going to help you get back in a healthy headspace and do the great work that you do on campus with students. Have a great day.
Bye.